Okay, so it is just after 11 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. So thank you everybody for being part of the webinar today. My name is Amy Jewett, and I am the Invasive Species Coordinator at the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy and the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program. And today's webinar is going to be talking about a very special event that the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives program has been doing now for 4 years called the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge. And I'm really excited for all of you to be a part of this event. So without further ado, we will get started. Oh, and just one other thing to mention real quick. You have the opportunity to ask questions at the very end of the webinar. So make sure we'll be using the chat feature in order to ask your questions. So actually, if you have questions as we go throughout the training, you can certainly chat them or type them in the chat box now, and then we can look at them at the very end, or you can just save your questions till the end and type them in the chat box then. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So for those of you on today's webinar that have already participated in the water in years past, you're already familiar with this event, the main purpose behind it. But for those of you that are new to this event, I welcome you, and I want to just first introduce why we do this. So the main purpose of the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge is to identify new water chestnut infestations in Pennsylvania. This is one of the main goals of this event. And so by doing so, by identifying these infestations, we're discerning areas that require initial or continued treatment efforts, which is really important to be able to do, because without knowing the distribution of the species, we're not able to implement proper treatment efforts. And that's really important that we're able to do that. Also, we're supporting initiatives to detect water chestnut early and prevent or slow its spread. We're also raising awareness of the harm caused by this and other invasive species in Pennsylvania. And we're going to be utilizing the iMapInvasives database to gather and disperse data on water chestnut findings. And I am the main coordinator of the iMapInvasives program in Pennsylvania. And so this is actually here on the left-hand side, this small screenshot is a photo of the main landing page in iMapInvasives. So for those of you that don't already have a login account, this is what the database will look like when you first log in. And then this photo here on the right-hand side, there's actually a few photos of this location throughout my training, but this was a photo taken at a location in Bucks County at Bradford Reservoir. And as you can see, this water body has a lot of green on it, and all of that green, or at least most of that green, is water chestnut. And so you can see when allowed to take over, water chestnut really can overwhelm a water body. And so this invasive species is definitely harming this area ecologically. And we'll talk more about that as we go through today's training. Okay, so all of you, as participants in the challenge, you're going to need to know some information about what's expected and what to do. So the who, it's going to be you and your technology of choice that are going to be participating in the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge. And so your technology that you can utilize in order to record your observations is probably going to be your smartphone, but you can also use a tablet or a desktop or a laptop computer to access the iMapInvasives program. And so, of course, we're going to be searching just for water chestnut. We're very specific in that you don't need to worry about looking for other invasive species. There's certainly, if you do see other invasive species out there, you can record them in iMap, but just not be part of the challenge. But so for this event, we're looking primarily for water chestnut. And the when, you're going to be searching during the whole month of July, so from July 1 to July 31st. And we're going to be, I'm going to be asking you to report your findings to the iMapInvasives database, which is available online. And the why, so water chestnut is a high priority species, an invasive species in Pennsylvania. which essentially means that it isn't widespread across the state, at least not yet. And it is known to cause harm to our native wildlife and their habitats and hinders recreational activities. So how? So as far as conducting your survey efforts, you can either search for water chestnut by walking along the shorelines of different water bodies, or you can hop in a boat, either a canoe, a kayak, or a powered boat, and you can search for water chestnut that way by actually being out on the water. Also, just want to touch briefly on the use of iMapInvasives and the value of utilizing this program as part of this effort. So by using iMapInvasives, we can know the specific places in Pennsylvania where water chestnut has already been reported. And I'm going to show you a map here in a few minutes of data that's pulled directly from iMapInvasives that shows just that, the distribution of the species. We can also know precise observation dates of when water chestnut was found at particular locations. And also in iMapInvasives, we can know specific observer name, their affiliated organization. So if there was any questions about a particular record, we can easily know who to contact. And we also have that person's email address because that is required in order to have a login account. And so having all that information stored in one place that's publicly available is really valuable when it comes to being able to track where we're finding invasive species in Pennsylvania. And just to note that some documented reports of water chestnut that are already in iMapInvasives may not necessarily guarantee that a population still exists. There may have been treatment that occurred to that population, or maybe something else occurred. But at least at one point in time, if there is a point on the map, it was indicating that water chestnut was definitely there at that time. Okay, so where's water chestnut been found already? So according to the data that we have in iMapInvasives, water chestnut has been found in 12 different counties in Pennsylvania. And excuse me. And here's that list of the 12 counties. Here's a map showing that area to be. And this is a really cool map. It's dynamic because it's pulled directly from data invasives. And here in my ArcGIS story map, I can actually zoom in on this map. I can look at a little bit more. So if I keep zooming in and I'm going to click on this particular dot right here, I can pull that up and I can know who reported it. So I can see the observer's name here. I can see the observation date. And I can actually look at that record right from this story map. And certainly if you're logged into iMapInvasives, you can look at any of this data that way as well. But here I can look at this observation and I can look at the points that were found. Just to back up, tell you a little bit more about this map. So you can see that there's different types of data that are being presented on green dots, and there is orange triangles. And the green dots are showing locations of water chestnut that have been confirmed that have precise locations. And the orange triangles are also confirmed locations of water chestnut that have more approximate locations that are not necessarily precise. But overall, we can get a general sense of where water chestnut has already been found. Okay, so let's get to know water chestnut a little bit better. Again, for some of you on this webinar, you might already be very familiar with this species, and so the information that I'm going to cover is just a little review. But for those of you on today's webinar that are not familiar at all with water chestnut, I hope that this information is helpful for you as far as being able to identify it. And also, just for your reference, all the information that I'm going to go over today as far as how to identify this species is from this field guide called Pennsylvania's Field Guide to Aquatic Invasive Species. It was made by Pennsylvania Sea Grant and is a really great resource available online. But just to show you all the information that I'm getting, that I'm showing you guys today is coming from this section in the field guide here under the water chestnut section. Okay, so let's start out by showing you some pictures of the plant. So here's a single plant, a single water chestnut plant. And this is what you're going to be looking for. This is the plants, and you're going to be looking for it in water bodies like a pond, lake, a stream, or a river. The leaves of water chestnut, you can see that they're triangular in shape, and they have these noticeably toothed margins. And so those are kind of some distinctive characteristics of the species that you can be looking for. Also, water chestnut makes these nutlets that have these really sharp spines on them, and they are capable of penetrating through your shoes. So be very careful when you are in an area that might have an infestation of water chestnut, especially if you're walking along the shorelines where these nutlets might be. Be very careful to not step on them. Dense mats when it creates a large infestation on a water body. And when it makes these dense mats, it a water body and limit the light and oxygen that that water body can access. And here again is a picture of Bradford Reservoir in Bucks County. We can see that this looks more like a lawn than it does a water body. And this is just kind of a drastic example, but nonetheless, it is a real example to show you what can happen when water chestnut can take over a water body. And I think this picture really kind of says it all as far as the reason why we need to find and treat this species in the places where it's at, because we don't want more water bodies that look like this. And to my knowledge, Bradford Reservoir, it has undergone some treatments in the past, but I believe that there is still a water chestnut infestation that is present on this water body. And from data that we have received in iMapInvasives in the past, we're starting to see that areas downstream of Bradford Reservoir and Little Neshaminy Creek have started to indicate populations of water chestnut that are new. And it's my kind of thinking that those new populations of water chestnut downstream are coming from this larger population here in Bradford Reservoir. And so again, it's really important to tackle some of these infestations at the source so that they aren't able to spread to other new locations. So let's just go over in detail some of the things that you'll want to know as far as how to identify water chestnut when you're out in the field. And the scientific name, just for your reference, for water chestnut is Trapa natans. So water chestnut is a rooted aquatic plant, and it's very different from the one that you find in Chinese takeout. It can dominate different types of freshwater settings, including ponds, shallow lakes, and rivers, because it can grow in these thick, dense colonies, and it can grow as much as 4.8 meters or 16 feet in length. So the roots can go pretty deep down into a water body. So the leaves of water chestnut, they come in two distinct forms, floating and submersed. And the floating leaves are triangular or fan-shaped with noticeably toothed margins on the outer edges. And they are arranged in these large floating rosettes, as you can see here in this photo. The upper leaves are glossy, while the underside is covered with soft hairs. And the leaves are kept afloat by spongy inflated bladders, which are attached to long stems called petioles, which connect the leaves to the submerged section of the plant. And just to show you a picture of what those inflated bladders look like, here we can see that in this middle photo right here. Then as far as the flowers of the plant, we can see that right here in this photo on the right. The flowers of water chestnut are small. They have 4 petals and the flower is white, and it's going to be located in the center of that leafy rosette. Usually the flowers will appear in mid to late July. So when all of you are out doing your searching for this species is probably when you'll notice that it's also flowering. So as far as the fruits and seeds of water chestnut, again, we've already talked about this. It makes these black nut-like structures that have 4 spiny projections. We can see a photo here of a nutlet. It's actually still green in color because it probably was just recently removed from its parent plant, so it hasn't turned black yet, but ultimately this will turn black. And again, they are very, very sharp. So just be very careful while you're walking along areas where water chestnut infestations are known to be. And then as far as the stems and roots of this plant, it has numerously finely branched roots that develop along the lower stem. And you can sort of see those here again in this middle photograph. And the stems and roots will assist the plant in order to anchor it to the substrate at the bottom of the water body. So where can you find this species? So water chestnut is known to grow in any freshwater setting, but it does prefer nutrient-rich waters that are less than 4.8 meters deep or 16 feet deep. So it can be found in ponds, lakes, slow-moving streams, and rivers. So this is just an example of a stream that you could go out and survey as a potential place that you may find water chestnut. So water chestnut does have a high reproductive rate, and each plant is known to produce up to 15 nuts per season. And then each nut can sink to the bottom of a water body and remain viable for up to 12 years. And I just want to pause on that section right here and just kind of delve into that a little bit more. So when you have a water body that is infested with water chestnut, you could go out today and remove every single plant from the surface of that water body, but you're still going to have an infestation because there's likely a large amount of nutlets on the bottom of that water body, and those nutlets are still viable according to research. They are viable for up to 12 years. So management of this particular invasive species is going to be very time consuming and labor intensive because it's going to take a long time to really eradicate a population of water chestnut. So just, let that sink in for you, because certainly people who are out doing management of this and other invasive species are kind of in it for the long haul. And this is one of the reasons why. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. Also, water chestnut is known to spread vegetatively when the rosettes of floating leaves will break apart, and fragments can attach to boats and trailers or float to new locations. So it's really important, and I want to share this information with you guys. Your gear when you're out on the water. So when you're out doing surveys for this event, and also if you're just out personally recreating on your own, it's really important to be cleaning your gear. So if you're a boater, you want to make sure to be removing any plant fragments from your boat. Also, if you're a fisherman, you want to make sure that you're removing any plant fragments that might be on your fishing gear. So there's more information here on our website. It's actually under our resources tab. You can your gear, and there's more information for how to do that properly for various ways of Okay, so as far as the native range of this species, it's not native to North America. It's known to be native from Europe, Asia, and Africa. And it was brought to the United States by water gardeners in the 1800s, and soon after it quickly established and was first observed in Massachusetts. And since then, water chestnut has spread to several states in the Northeast United States, as you can see in this graphic here on the left-hand side. So there are several known environmental impacts from this species that are negatively hurting our wildlife and our ecosystems. And so again, we saw a photo of this, but the dense floating mats of water chestnut can choke out a water body, and that's not healthy for that area. So we want to make sure that the water chestnut is not able to do that. And so by ridding it from a water body is certainly what we would hope to be able to do. And then also colonies of water chestnut can outcompete native organisms for nutrients and space, and it offers little nutritional value for wildlife. And so I do just want to delve into this section here as well. All of our native wildlife that we have here in Pennsylvania has evolved to be able to use the native plant life for food and other resources. And so when we have an introduced alien species like water chestnut, here in Pennsylvania, our wildlife are not evolved to be able to utilize it. And hence why water chestnut offers little nutritional value for our wildlife. And so when water chestnut will outcompete our native plant species, that is ultimately impacting our wildlife. And so just to kind of give that some perspective, that is one of the reasons why our wildlife are not able to utilize this and other alien species, is because they're not evolved in order to do that. And then also, as far as people go, water chestnut does really impede boating and other recreational activities like swimming, fishing, jet skiing, all of that. So when you have a water body that's just completely covered, you can't really expect to utilize it in any way. And so certainly it impacts us as well as the wildlife. So as far as the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge goes, I'll be asking you to, when you go out and survey for this species, to report your findings. And that's going to include both presence and absence data. So when you find water chestnut, or if you look for it and you don't find it, I'm interested in having you report both presence and absence. And so you might be wondering why it's important to report absence data. And the reason is because absence data shows that an area was searched at one point in time by a set of trained eyes. And so I consider all of you to be trained at this point because you've learned a little bit about how to identify this species. So an area was searched and the target species was not found. And this information can be really valuable, especially to natural resource professionals, if an infestation of water chestnut is found at a later date. So essentially, by having that information documented, we can put a timestamp on that information to say, well, I looked at this location at this time and I didn't find it. And then maybe several years later, someone goes out and does find it. And so that can be a way to kind of understand that that infestation is fairly new based on data that was previously recorded. So this photo just shows an example of a water body where no visible water chestnut plants can be seen on the water surface. So if I was here surveying this water body, I would mark a data point in iMapInvasives for a not detected or an absence record to essentially show that I was here at this day and this time, and I looked and I didn't find the species. So in order for all of you to be able to record data in iMapInvasives and to participate in the challenge, you'll need to request an iMapInvasives login account. And this is really easy to do and it's free. So I'm just going to go through and show you how you can do that. So if you go to either iMapInvasives.org, which is this, or if you go to iMapInvasives.org, which is the Pennsylvania component of the IMAP. These websites has a login button at the top. So here's the login button on the Pennsylvania IMAP website, button on the iMapInvasives website. And if you click on either one of those login buttons, it's going to take you to this page. And here you can use this sign up form to request a login account. And then when you're actually ready to log into the database, you'll use this section here at the very top in order to log into the platform. And that's all you need to do as far as getting and requesting a iMapInvasives login account. The other thing that you're definitely going to want to do as part of being a participant in the challenge is to join a particular project in iMapInvasives, and it's going to be called the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge 2020 project. And so essentially any data that you're recording as part of this challenge, presence or absence, you're going to want to tag it under this particular project. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to just log in really quickly to iMapInvasives, and I will show you how to do that. Okay, we'll try loading that page again. Okay, let's try it. Okay, hold on. Here we go. I think it's just taking a little bit of time to load. Okay, here we go. Log map invasives. And over here on the upper left-hand corner is the main menu. And if you click on that menu and go down to projects and click on projects, it's going to bring up a list of all the projects that we currently have in iMapInvasives for Pennsylvania. And if you type in Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge, or just part of it, you'll see that name of the project pop up. And if you click on it, that project profile will open, and you'll see an option that says request project. And that's all you have to do. Just click on that link, and it will submit a request to join this project. Now, some of you that are on the webinar today are already members of the project. I went ahead and added you. But for some people, I wasn't able to do that, I think just because you didn't already have a login account created with iMap. So when you have an opportunity to, after you've created your project, go ahead, or created your account, go ahead and log in and request to be a part of that project. And then after you do that, you will get an approval shortly thereafter, and you'll get an email notification letting you know that you're now part of that project. So again, just make sure that any data that you are logging into iMap as part of the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge, you are tagging it to that particular project. That's really important to do. Okay, so I want to talk about how to utilize the iMapInvasives mobile app. This is likely going to be the method that most of you would like to use because you don't need the internet in order to collect data, and you can do so very easily while you're out in the field. Now, certainly you can go back in to your home office and record information in iMap that way if you jotted things down on pencil and paper. But for most of you, I think the mobile app is going to be the way that you want to go. So I just want to talk a little bit about how to get the app and how to use it. And also just to briefly mention, so you don't need an internet connection to utilize the app to create data. You upload your information from your app. And again, I'm going to go through that as I progress through this particular section. So when you're ready to download the app to your phone, your mobile device, you're going to get it wherever you get your other apps. So either Apple's App Store or Android's Google Play Store. And you're going to search using the keyword iMapInvasives. And once you've got that app already set up on your phone, before you start using it, and this is very important, before you start creating observation data, you want to set your preferences. And in order to do that, here's a screenshot of the app. This is what it will look like when you first open it. And there's a menu, a main menu in the upper left-hand corner that has these 3 white lines. And if you click on that, there's an option where it says to set your preferences. And that's what you want to do first, is set up your preferences. And when you're in that section, you'll choose the following things. So it's going to ask you to choose your jurisdiction. So you'll set that to Pennsylvania. You're also going to want to fill in your email address and your iMapInvasives password. Also, this part's really important. Please do not forget to do this. So there's a button in your preferences called Retrieve IMAP Lists. And you definitely want to make sure to click that button, because essentially what that does is it pulls information from the online version of iMapInvasives and it brings it into your offline mobile app. And so the information that it's bringing into your app includes the most up-to-date track species list, your affiliated organizations, and any projects that you're a part of. And so again, for this effort, it's going to be realizing that you are part of the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge project. So just so you know, if you go through and you try to set up your organization name or your project name, and if that option is blank in your app, it's because you didn't click that Retrieve IMAP List button that pulled it in from your online profile. Some people have had problems with that in the past, but that's all you have to do. So make sure you're clicking that Retrieve IMAP List button. Also, it's going to ask you some other things like how you want to see the track species list. So you can choose to look at the species list via common name, scientific name, or both. You can also choose to set up a custom species list. And what a custom species list is in the app is essentially, right now we have just over 400 species that we are tracking in iMapInvasives. And when you go through and select what species you observed in the app, it's going to give you that full list of over 400 to scroll through. And sometimes it can take a really long time to scroll through and get the one that you want to select. So when you set up a custom species list, you're essentially choosing which species you want to have show up in that list. So, for this particular event, you could choose to just have water chestnut show up in a custom species list. And then when you go through and are actually creating data and choosing what species you're observing or not observing, you could just have one species in your list, in your custom list, and it would save you a lot of time, is essentially what it comes down to. So again, just keep that in your back pocket, that if you would like to save a little bit of time going through that species list, you can choose to create a custom one. Also make sure you're setting up things like your project, again, that Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge 2020 project, selecting your affiliated organization, and some other things like picture quality, whether you want to save photos to your device's library or not, and how you want to look at the base map. So again, just really important, make sure you're filling in your iMap app preferences before you actually are starting to create data. Okay, so once you are ready to create data with the app, here is what you need to do. So you open the app, upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says Add Observation. And so you're going to click on that button. And the first thing it's going to ask you to do is to take a photo. So you'll take one photo. And that's actually right now the way that the app works. It only allows you to take one photo per observation. So make sure that the photo that you're including is a really good photo. Make sure that it includes those distinguishing characteristics of water chestnut that we've already discussed. Make sure that it's nice and close to the plant so that it's not so far away. And just make sure that it's very clear and crisp. We don't want any blurry photos because sometimes it can be really hard to identify something if the species is blurry. Also, you're going to fill in other details, including whether the species was detected or not. So that's that presence absence information. And also the date, which will fill in automatically. So you don't need to worry about filling that in. Also, what's automatic is the location. That will be determined directly from the GPS in your mobile device. So just make sure that when you are making a point with your mobile app, that you are standing or floating, if you're in a boat, that you are located as close as possible to that water chestnut as you can be. So essentially, you should be able to reach out and touch. That's how close you should be. Because just as reference, we've had some problems in the past when people are recording data with the app in iMap, that they will be standing, sometimes 10 or 15 feet away from the location where they're making an observation. And then that data point is then also mapped 10 to 15 feet away from where that actual species was located. And sometimes that can actually be in a parking lot where someone was standing, or another place where it's obvious that it was mapped inappropriately. So again, just make sure that you are standing basically right where that water chestnut is. Or again, if you're in a boat, make sure that you're right next to it. And again, make sure that you're choosing that project that we've already talked about and filling in other details like your affiliated organization. It's also going to ask you for the time in minutes that you searched an area, so you can just fill that in. And then it will also give you the option to fill in some assessment questions based on the distribution of the species that you see there, and comments boxes if you wanted to fill in any other details about your observation. And that's it. So once you filled in all that information, you want to save that record. And then you can go and make as many records as you'd like with the app. I don't believe there is a limit. But once you're ready to upload your records from your app to the online version of iMap, here's what you'll need to do. Again, you want to make sure that you're in an area that has an internet connection, because if you don't have that internet connection, you won't be able to upload successfully. So once you're back on the home screen of the app, you want to either check the little checkbox here next to each record, or go to your main menu and say select all. And that will just put a check mark in each record that you just created. And then also in your menu, you're going to go back and choose the option that says upload selected. And once you choose that, it will ask you a few questions about, are you sure you're ready to upload these records? And you can just say, yes, I'm ready. And you should notice that your records will then disappear from the home screen of your mobile app. And that's a good thing. That indicates that your records were successfully uploaded to the iMapInvasives online database, and they are no longer living in your mobile app, which is what we're going for. But if for whatever reason you notice that after you go through that upload process and your observations are still there on your home screen, that means that something didn't quite go right. And just go through that upload process again, and it should work for you. So if there's any problems as far as having your records upload, you can just always reach out to me. But again, I would suggest checking your internet connection, because a lot of times when people have that problem, it's because they're not in an area with an internet connection. Okay, so this next part, I want to talk about, or actually I'm going to show you two videos that that will describe how you can use the online database. So we're done talking about the mobile, and I want to talk about how you can use the online version of iMapInvasives to log data in. And you can access the online database from any from any form of technology, whether it's a desktop, a laptop, tablet, or a mobile device. So this first video is going to talk about how to enter a presence record. Create a presence record in iMapInvasives. It's going to be necessarily represent actual data that is real. It's just going to be for training purposes. So in order to get started, we first need to log iMapInvasives, and I'm here at paimappinvasives.org, and I'm going to click on the login button, and I'm going to go ahead and enter my user credentials, my email, and my password. Okay, and then once we are logged in, the screen that we'll see, and we want to click the Create Record button and choose Presence. So there's different options you can choose as far as the shape type. You can choose point, line, or polygon. So for this instance, I'm just going to keep it at a point. And then you can select your location either by zooming in on the map, by using the zoom tool over here, or by holding the shift button down and dropping a box at a particular area on the map and zooming in. We'll just clean up the map a little bit more just by, excuse me, turning off some of the layers so we can see it a little bit better. So you can zoom in and choose your location that way, or you can enter coordinates. And I actually have some coordinates already prepared for the location that I had surveyed for this particular example. And so I'm going to copy and paste those into the coordinate section here. I'll choose submit, and that will put me right at the location where I conducted my survey. I'm actually going to change the base map so I can see the link a little bit better. And this is where I made my finding. Again, this is just a training example. It's not necessarily real data. But for this instance, I want to say that the area I surveyed wasn't just this single point. So I'm going to buffer it by 10 meters to show that I surveyed kind of the general area right here at this boat launch. We'll say accept that buffer and go to the options for next. And we're now going to choose the species that we found. And so it's going to be a finding for water chestnut. You can choose to either enter the common name or the scientific name. Either will be fine. And the observer is fine. We'll keep that as is. The date is fine. And for this example, since it's part of the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge, we're going to add it to the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge 2020 project. You're definitely going to want to add a photo, at least one. And so I'm going to add my one photo here. I would encourage you, if you can, to add multiple photos, because that's always a good thing to be able to see all the area that you were seeing there as far as documenting that with a photo. So try to add more than one if possible, and make sure to add a photo credit so we know who took that photo. And then next you're going to enter the number of plants that you found. And so I'm not entirely sure how many plants were at this location. Again, this is just a training example. But I do know about the percent cover of how many plants were there. I'm going to say is about 5 to 25%. You can also use this little slider bar to adjust your percent cover. So if you notice as I'm sliding it, my percent cover in the drop down above is changing. You can do it that way as well. There's also a distribution drop down that you can select from there as well. So I'm going to say it was a sparse population of water chestnut at this location. There's a comments box that you can add comments if you'd like for anything that might be relevant to include with this observation. There's also some advanced details as well that you can choose to fill in. So there's evaluation type options to choose from. There's also follow-up information, information on the impact of the invasive, what you see that it might be doing to this location as far as impacting the local habitat, wildlife, or other plant species. There's information on the repository if you happen to collect a sample of the specimen that you found and deposited at a museum. There's also information about biocontrols, knologies, and so on. And so if any of those other options are relevant to include in your observation record, go ahead and fill in that information. And then when you're finished, go on to the next button, and it's going to show you a summary of everything that you just filled in. And if there's something that is either incorrect or missing that you forgot to fill in, you can just choose the back button to go back and fill in those details. But everything looks okay here, so I'm going to say complete. And once that saves, it gives me two record identification numbers. The first is the searched area record, and if we hover over that little information icon, it's saying that this searched area has been auto-generated, and that basically means that this record has been tied to this presence record, and that's because all records in iMapInvasives are tied to their own unique searched area record, and so that's been auto-generated by itself. So we can click on that just so you can see what's in there. So it shows us a map of the location. It gives us some basic information about who created it and their organization. And then there's also some details. We didn't necessarily fill in some of this information, but we are able to, if we want to click the edit button up here, we can edit any of these fields. But if we go to the map and we click on this presence record, this is more of the basic information as far as what we just created and what we observed in the field. So here's that photo of water chestnut that I included, the photo credit, the infested area that gets created basically by itself in iMap. And then there's also information down here about the distribution. Again, I filled that in, and the tagged projects. And if you wanted to edit any of this information, again, you just choose that edit button. And now you can see that all these fields are now editable to me. So you can do that. And then once you're ready to save everything, you want to make sure you click the button at the top. And that's how you create a presence record in iMap. Okay. So that was information on a presence record. And now I'm going to show you another pre-recorded video that I did also of how to use the online version, online database in iMapInvasives for how to create a not detected record. So we'll go ahead and watch that. Is going to talk about how to create a not detected or absence record in iMapInvasives. It's going to be just for training purposes only. It's not going to necessarily represent real data. So I'm already logged into iMapInvasives, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the create record here at the top, and I'm going to select not detected. And it's going to allow me to choose the shape type that I want to create, either a point line or a polygon. So I'm going to choose just a point. And next I can select my location of where I did my survey, either by using the zoom tools over here on the left side of the screen, or by holding my shift button down and drawing a box around an area of the map that I can zoom in that way. And again, I'm just going to clean up the map a little bit by turning off some of the information that's there. So you can choose your location that way, or you can enter coordinates, which again, I'm going to enter coordinates. I've already gotten them from Google Maps. So I'm going to copy and paste them here. Click submit. And this is the location in North Park, which is in the Pittsburgh region. And I would like to create a buffer to indicate the area that I surveyed. So I'm going to create a 20 meter buffer. And again, I'm going to look at my map a little bit different. And so there is my location at Marshall Lake. I'm going to accept that buffer and choose next. And the species that I looked for and I did not find for this tree is going to be water chestnut. And it's going to ask for my time search. So I'm going to say I searched for about 5 minutes. And the observer and the date information is fine, so I don't need to change that. We do want to tag this data record to the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge project. And again, it's going to ask if you want to put a photo here of the area that you looked at and did not find water chestnut. Since this is a not detected record, you can choose to add a photo or not. Here's fine, so I'm actually not going to add a photo for this one. And then the reason for not detecting, excuse me, so it gives you a few different options here that you can choose. And so I'm actually just going to say, I'm actually going to leave that blank, and I'm just going to say, look for water chestnut and did not find. Just leaving it very simple, just like that. And then choosing the next button. And then here it's going to give me just a summary of everything that I just entered. And I'll look over that and make sure everything looks okay and everything looks fine. So I'm going to say complete. And it's going to, again, give me the 2 different record types here, the searched area, which is, again, that auto-generated record that IMAP creates. Every record in IMAP is associated with its individual searched area record. But here's my not detected record. And so I can click on the one and I can see the information that I just entered. And again, if I wanted to edit anything here, I can do so by clicking the edit button, scrolling down and adding anything else here. So again, if I did want to check in or select something here for the reason for not detecting, I could do that. And so, but I don't want to change anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and click save. And that's how you create a not detected record in IMAP.
Okay. So both of those examples should give you a better idea of how to record data in the online version of iMapInvasives in case you don't want to use the mobile app. And just to clarify in those videos, in case you are using the zoom tools to zoom in on the map to identify your location in case you don't have coordinates, make sure that you're zooming in farther. I didn't necessarily zoom in too close on a particular area. I kind of kept it at the state level just because I was entering coordinates. But if you are zooming in on the map or using the zoom tools as a way to record your location, make sure you're zooming in like really, really close so that you can make sure to define that mapped location fairly accurately. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so now after we're done talking about how to enter your data, I do want to talk a little bit more about the challenge and what to expect once the challenge is over. So again, the challenge, as far as the survey part of it, is going to go for the month of July, so July 1 to July 31. And then on August 1st, when the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge is over for the year, myself as the iMapInvasives administrator here in Pennsylvania will compile all the collected data that you guys, the participants, log into iMapInvasives, and I will create a data analysis based on that information. And the analysis will include the following information: any new water chestnut infestations that are found during the challenge. And so this will essentially be any new water chestnut infestations that we don't already have data for in iMapInvasives. So that's how I'm deeming it new infestation. And then the names of water bodies that require
new or continued treatment efforts. And so that will be a list of all the places where we know water chestnut to currently be. And again, those will all require or need some kind of treatment efforts. And then also the analysis will include information on absence data. So there's areas that you guys survey that are free of water chestnut. So that's, again, part of this analysis, and part of the information that we want to capture is also that absence information. And so once that analysis is pulled together, all of you guys as the participants of the challenge and all registered users of iMapInvasives will receive a copy of that data analysis, and it will also be posted on the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives website. And I would encourage you that once that data analysis is created and is available, please share it with other people in your area and your region, because it's really important that this information, as far as this species and its distribution and the places where it needs to be managed, it's important for that information to get into the hands of the people who actually can implement those treatment efforts. And ultimately, that is the goal of this analysis, is to get that information into the hands of people who need to know it, who can then actually act on that information. Also, there's another webinar that I'll be doing on September 10th. And this is directly related to the Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge, because it's going to be a report essentially in a webinar format of the data analysis. So we'll discuss the results of the this year's Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge, and it's open to all of you if you'd like to attend that, other members of the general public. So if you'd like to attend that event, it is posted on Eventbrite right now, that you can go to eventbrite.com. You can register directly for that event right there. You can also just type in, once you're on Eventbrite, type in the title of the event, Water Chestnut Chasers Challenge, report out, and there's a register button right there that you can register for free. Again, that's on September 10th. As far as this year's challenge, so August 15th of 2020 of this year is the data entry deadline for all of you to get your information into iMapInvasives. So for example, if you have data that's still living in your mobile app after you've already went out and collected it, make sure that it's uploaded into iMapInvasives by August 15th. And same is true if you have other information that you may have jotted down on pencil and paper, make sure that that is logged in to iMapInvasives by that day. And then the other important date to keep in mind is August 31st, and that is the day when the winners of this year's challenge will be announced. And there are prizes involved, and so there are going to be 3 winners that are selected as being winners of this year's event. And in order to qualify to be one of these 3 individuals, you have to enter the most presence or absence data records in the largest number of water bodies across the state. So in other words, the more water bodies that you survey and enter information into iMap from, the more you have a chance of being one of these 3 winners. So essentially, we really want to spread out and look at as many water bodies as we can. And so if you are one of those people that is able to go out and search a whole lot of water bodies, you will probably end up being one of the winners of this year's challenge. And again, there will be 3 people that will be qualified, that will end up being winners. And so the 3 people to be winners of this year's challenge will each receive a prize package of 3 items: an iMapInvasives water bottle, which are new as of this year, a Life is Good beach towel, and an REI gift card. And all of these prize items, if you haven't already guessed, are items that you can use to go out and recreate on the water. And so that's how those items were chosen. And then I do want to mention one other thing, and I believe that, yep, so Megan is on the webinar today. So Megan Rogales is a watershed specialist with the Bucks County Conservation District, and she has been hosting a very special event for the last 11 years. This year is going to be its 12th year. The event is called Paddle with a Purpose,
and it's an event that invites volunteers to come to Lake Towhee, again, which is in Bucks County, to hand pull water chestnut from the lake, either from the shoreline or by hopping in a boat and going and pulling the water chestnut from the lake that way. And this is actually a photo that I am in. I'm in the orange boat, and I participated in this event a few years ago, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed being able to be part of an invasive species management effort that put me out on the water on a beautiful, warm, hot July day, and it was a really great event. Typically, this is an days. You can participate in 1 or all 3 days, and it's a big group event. But because of this year with the COVID-19 pandemic, they had to make some changes to this event. It is still happening, but it's happening just a little bit differently to make sure that anyone who wants to participate can do so safely. And so for this year's event and how they've changed it and modified it. So the event, instead of taking place over 3 days, is now taking place over a 6-week time period from July 1st through August 16th. And so you can choose to participate by pulling water chestnut from the lake anytime during that 6-week period that the park where the lake is located is open and your schedule and the weather permits you to go out. So here's the address of where the lake is located. It's in Quakertown, Pennsylvania. And when you're out on the water collecting and pooling the water chestnut, you'll need to have the following items that you provide yourself. So you'll need to have your own boat, whether that's a canoe, a kayak, or an electric motorboat, and you also have to provide your own paddles. Personal flotation device, or PFD. Make sure that you have clothes on that you don't mind getting wet or muddy. Typically in July, there's definitely going to be a need for sunscreen, so make sure you're wearing sunscreen and make sure you're wearing good water shoes. Again, this is a location that has a very heavy and dense infestation of water chestnuts, so those nutlets are definitely present at this site. So if you're wearing flip-flops, you definitely run the So make sure that you're wearing some good durable water shoes. Also make sure you bring a hat, water bottle, and something to eat, either a snack or a lunch. And then the Bucks County Conservation District will provide you with a list of items in what they're deeming a water chestnut collection kit. And they will send this to you either via the mail or contactless delivery. So they'll be giving you a set of gloves and bags to collect water chestnut in, and then leave those bags on the shore at Lake Towhee for proper disposal. Also in the kit is an identification card on how to ID water chestnut. There'll be guidelines for removal, and then also follow-up disposal of collected plants, which will occur weekly on Mondays or more frequently as needed. So if you are located in the southeast region of Pennsylvania near Lake Towhee or near Bucks County, I would encourage you to participate in this event or let other people know about it that you know that are in that area. This is definitely a really worthy cause. Again, this will be the 12th year that they're hosting this event. So if you have questions or you'd like to request a water chestnut collection kit, please contact Megan Rogales, and her email address is here. It's mrogales@bucksccd.org. And that is the end of my webinar training. So we finished right at 12 o'clock, but if anyone has any questions that you'd like to ask at this time, I will look at them in the chat feature and I will answer them as best I can. So it looks like we do have at least one question. Have I contacted canoe clubs about this effort? The answer is no, I have not contacted anyone other than our registered user list in iMapInvasives. So I would say if you know of canoe clubs or other interested people that might be interested in this kind of event, please do share this information with them. And just for everyone's reference, I did record today's training
And the story map that I used to put together my presentation today is available online. And so after today's webinar training, all of you will be getting an email from me that will have a link to the recording and a link to the story map so that you can reference this if you need to as once the challenge begins, but also you can use it to share out with other people that might be interested in participating. So another question came in, what is the recommended distance between observations on a single body of water? So I don't think there is necessarily a recommended distance per se. It's more like, you know, if you find water chestnut in several sections of the water body, you can, you know, make different observation points at each of those sections. You could also, if you'd like to, and this might be a little bit easier, is you could create a polygon, which you'd have to do in the online version of iMap, not necessarily the mobile app. You could create a polygon of that whole water body and just indicate in the comments that you found water chestnut at various sections of the water body. And you could give some more information about where exactly those sections were. And again, you would do that if you didn't want to make a point for each of those places where you saw water chestnut. So you can do it a few ways. Really, the goal is just to say, you know, if you did find water chestnut somewhere, that you're recording it in some way that's then understandable to other people who are looking at your information. Okay, so another question came in, how do we best enter observations for a linear search? For example, if we do a 5-mile paddle. So you can do, again, this would have to be something you would do in the online version of iMap because the mobile app is only able to document point data. So there's an option, as I mentioned previously, you can create a polygon. There's also an option to create a line. And especially for a linear search, like if you're just going in a straight line, you could just create a line type of data record that would then indicate what you saw in that area. Or if it's easier just to make points at various places, you can do that as well. Again, that main goal is just to enter the data for if we're finding or not finding species and just making it as relevant and clear to other people as possible. Is there any other questions before we wrap up today? These are all really great questions. Thank you for asking them. And again, you can all feel free to follow up with me after today's training if you have any other questions. And the best way to reach out to me right now is actually through email because I'm not generally in the office because of the pandemic. So my email is ajewett@paconserve.org. Let's see. Okay, wonderful. So I don't see any other questions. So with that, I will wrap up today's training. And again, just say thank you to all of you for attending. And once July 1st comes around, I wish you good luck as you search for water chestnut in the various parts of the state where you are from. So thank you, everybody. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day.